Whoever does not jump is Viktor Órban, they chant. Hungary's Prime Minister, a pariah here among this coalition of opposition. All day Sunday, thousands, from the Greens to the far right, were united in anger. Fed up with what they say is their government's creeping authoritarianism. In the thick of the smoke bombs, tear gas and clashes, desperate voices plead for calm. Do not throw, do not throw. Why are you throwing? He shouts. Others point the finger at the police. I want to say that these protesters are here for you too, for you and you and you, for all of you. The outrage was sparked by a rowdy parliamentary session last week, with Viktor Órban's government taking over control of a judicial system that has until now been independent, and weakening employment rights, described as a slave law by critics. For many, this seventh constitutional change in as many years under Órban was the last straw.
Well, I'd like to have a democracy here. I'd like to live in a country where I can freely decide on what I can do, and no decisions are made above my head.
We have unfortunately reached the point where the government interferes with almost every bit of people's everyday life, in cultural administration, labour and healthcare.
The result is piling pressure on Hungary's government and puts its controversial leader on a collision course, not just with the European Union, but with his own people.
Well, for more now, let's cross over to correspondent Stefan Bos in Budapest. Stefan, the mass protests have been going on for days now. How much of a threat do they pose to the government of Prime Minister Viktor Órban?
Well, that's, of course, the interesting question. I have to say that the groups, of course, are very divided. You have the far-right Jobbik party, for instance, among the protesters as well. And, of course, there are other groups as well among the demonstrators. I think, however, that if they can keep the momentum going and also their main goal to create more freedom in Hungary and perhaps even in the future the resignation of the Prime Minister, then I think it will go on as well. I think we have really to see how the coming days will be. We have seen during the night one of the largest demonstrations in years in Hungary. And of course, if they can keep the momentum going and there are more protests planned today, then of course it could mean more pressure on Prime Minister Viktor Órban.
How has the government reacted to these protests? Is there any indication that it may be willing to compromise?
Well, for the moment, there is no indication they are willing to compromise. However, there are some behind-the-scenes talks, I think, going on what to do next. Because if these rallies will go on, and if indeed many people will keep going to the streets, then, of course, you will see more pressure on the Prime Minister. So far, they have said these people are mercenaries of George Soros, the rich philanthropist who, for instance, financed the Central European University and other rights groups. But of course, the demonstrators are denying that, and they say we are united in our fight and our struggle for freedom today.
Well, talking about unity, it appears to be a rather broad alliance of different groups out there on the streets of Budapest. What is it that unites them in their anger against the government?
Well, that is indeed the issue, because, of course, there are also some far-right people sometimes seen among the protesters, and there is a little bit fear that those far-right people may provoke some more problems among the demonstrators. But I think they are united in really their struggle for freedom. And, for instance, here behind me in the Parliament building where I'm standing now, you really saw in recent days thousands and thousands of people, many young people as well. I think that is an interesting point for Prime Minister Órban, that many students are involved in his rallies. And if they will continue, we have to see. It's very cold, but they are planning really to keep the momentum going even beyond Christmas.
Stefan, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Correspondent Stefan Bos there in Budapest.